George Foreman passed away last week. All-time great heavyweight boxer. You covered him. You lived through his entire career. How would you rate him? What was your impression of George Foreman?
Okay, how about if we do it like this? Let's first talk about him as a boxer.
Sure.
And then I'll talk. I put this on Substack, but this is a lot bigger audience. I'll tell about the first time, the only time I actually spent time with him. I'm very interested in heavyweights. I'm also interested in every weight, including middleweights, which I love. When I rate my top 5 heavyweights of all time, I do it in this order: Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Rocky Marciano, Foreman, Sonny Liston. Now, and that's just my opinion. A lot of you, if you know them, may disagree, which is fine. And the flaw in what I've just given you is they're all from different eras. Lewis was an era. Marciano was a different era. It's very hard. Liston was from a different era. It's hard to do that, just like it is with baseball players. So I think my ratings are fundamentally flawed. It's the best I can do. The other 2 all-time great heavyweights are Jack Johnson and Jack Dempsey, but I don't know their work. They were way before me, and I haven't seen much film of them. So I politely leave them out.
Also, who would be your honorable mentions, like the 5 through 10 guys?
The 5 through 10, in no particular order, Iggy. Tyson.
Yeah.
He would be in there somewhere, especially early Tyson.
Prime Tyson, yeah.
Yeah. He was great. Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes was undefeated for a long time. What's happening with you?
What about Lennox?
He would be there. Now, I look, for example, let's just compare them to Foreman. Foreman would have knocked out Tyson in 2 or 3 rounds. He would have done to, oh yeah, he would have done.
He would have done to what he did to Frazier.
Absolutely. Tyson's small. He would have punched down at him. Tyson couldn't have really gotten to him, close. Tyson took a good shot and he took a beating. He did. Foreman would have just killed him. Liston would have killed him too for the same reasons. I think Larry Holmes, he was a very good boxer and he was a brave fighter, could take a shot. He didn't hit particularly hard like Ali, and that was a flaw for both of them. I don't think there was any way that Larry Holmes could have threatened Foreman. And I think Lennox Lewis, who didn't take a great shot, I think Lennox Lewis, the only way he could have beat Foreman would be jab and run. And he might have. He might have been able. Tommy Morrison beat him that way later in Foreman's career. Maybe he could do that. But if they ever engaged, Foreman would knock him out. He would knock him out fast. So I put those and other heavyweights that people may not really know about. Jersey Joe Walcott, who gave Marciano a lot of trouble and Lewis a lot of trouble. He would probably be in my lower 5.
What I think is so interesting about Foreman's ranking, you put him at 4 all time for heavyweights, which is so reasonable. And the 3 guys ahead of him are Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Rocky Marciano. Let's go one at a time. Imagine a fight in your head of Rocky Marciano and George Foreman.
That's very interesting. I put Marciano 3rd because Iggy, he was undefeated. He was undefeated. And although he fought a lot of fighters that were not great, he knocked out Walcott twice, and he beat Ezzard Charles, I think, twice, knocked him out. These were great heavyweights. Ezzard Charles might be my 5th in that group. So him against Foreman, I think he might have given 30 or 40 pounds to Foreman. So you would call Marciano now a cruiserweight, under 200. Right. They didn't have that then. He was a heavyweight, but he fought in the 180s. Yeah. So it's quite possible that Foreman would have knocked him out. But he had a more distinguished career than Foreman. In addition, he hit as hard as Foreman or harder.
Wow.
Rocky Marciano would knock your head off. Wow. The most famous right hand in the history of boxing is the 1-punch knockout over Walcott in their championship fight. Boom, see you later. So I think it's possible that Foreman really couldn't hurt Marciano, and Marciano could knock him out. Ron Lyle had him down on the canvas any number of times. It would have been a fascinating fight. But I think either one could have won it. It would have been a fascinating fight.
What about Foreman versus Lewis?
Again, Lewis did not take the greatest shot. If Foreman got to him, he could knock him out. Lewis was not quick on his feet like Ali. He was not. But his hands were really fast, Iggy. And he punched in combinations, 1, 2, 3, like that. And he hit at least as hard as Foreman. I don't see Foreman beating him, Iggy. I just think Joe Louis, again, smaller, Joe Louis was so gifted. And also, I don't think Ali could have beat Joe Louis.
Right.
You know, Bill Walsh loved boxing. And among the things that bonded us were, we talked about boxing all the time. And he was so sweet, and certain Bill and certain innocent. We would, Lowell, let's talk about Lewis and Ali again. And he was like a kid, you know.
Yeah.
And he once said to me, Lowell, I'm going with Lewis because Ali won't make the fight. If it's not for Lewis, there won't be a fight. Ali will run away. And Bill didn't respect that. Ali would have tried to win by jabbing and running. And I don't think he could have hurt Lewis. I think eventually Lewis, he wouldn't have knocked him out, but I think Lewis would have maybe done to him what Joe Frazier did in the first fight. Lewis was really something, Iggy.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to ask you, my final question for Foreman is, the one matchup we did see was him against Ali, and it's the most famous fight ever. It's the rope-a-dope. If they had a rematch, could Ali have done that again, or would Foreman have won a rematch? I mean, what do you think? How does that play out in your mind?
I have heard, but I've never documented it because I didn't know who to talk to, that Foreman wanted a rematch, but Ali didn't. That's what I've heard.
See, and can't do that twice.
No, he can't do it twice. And that Ali didn't want to he took a beating. He took a beating in that fight, and that he didn't want it again. And Lord knows, I don't blame him. And I don't think he owed that to anybody. So let me say this, though. Earlier in their careers, when they were both young men, let's not think of it after Ali had been, he had been out of boxing for over 3 years. Let's think of him when he knocked out Sonny Liston twice. Yeah. I think that Ali would have boxed Foreman's ears off.
I see what you mean. And the thing, when they finally face each other, Ali wasn't that guy anymore.
No, he couldn't do that. He could only wait on the ropes and hope that this man punched himself out. And unintelligently, George Foreman did.
Right.
He did.
And he might not have a second time. Yeah. He could have just stood in the middle of the ring being like, dude, come here and fight me, man. What are you doing?
But if they had fought when they were younger men, he wouldn't have had him in the corner. Ali wouldn't have had to fight like that. He would have jabbed. His jab was great. It was fast. He would have cut him. He would have closed his eye. I don't know that he would have knocked him out, but he might have stopped him on cuts or things like that. I don't see George Foreman ever beating Ali. Now, the one we haven't talked about is Foreman and Liston.
Yeah.
Now,
they're similar.
Very much so. And here's the thing. I think, now you got to remember, Liston came up against Ali and he didn't have an answer for Ali.
Right.
Who did? Who had an answer for Ali? Liston was a great heavyweight. Yeah. When Floyd Patterson was the champion and was ducking everybody, Liston, who wasn't the champion, was knocking him out. He beat Eddie Machen. He knocked out Zora Foley. He knocked out Cleveland Williams twice. He was really tough. And I think he was more skillful than Foreman, even though I rate him behind him. Better jab, took a better shot, hit harder.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, why I put Foreman over him. Foreman, like Ali, would fight to the death.
Yeah.
Liston, it's a cliche, I believe, had a dog in him. I think he quit twice against Ali. In the first fight, he said his shoulder hurt. I don't believe it did.
Yeah.
He was getting beat. He couldn't knock him out. He was cut. He was tired. I think he lied. And in the second fight, God knows what happened. He went down in the first round from a punch, that couldn't have broken an egg.
Yeah.
Couldn't have broken an egg. And he
And he was
writhed
like
around.
flopping. He's like, oh god. Oh.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it was
That was
almost
bad
like he
luck.
was waiting for the 10 count.
Yeah.
So I believe he had a dog in him.
Yeah.
And I know Foreman didn't. So if it came down to it, I think Foreman had the stronger will, and that's why I put him over Liston.
But you're saying Liston hit harder than him?
Oh, God, did he hit hard, Iggy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God. And his jab was extended, and his jab could knock you out.
Wow.
Liston was really something. He was really something. And Iggy, I got to tell you, when I was a senior in high school,
Mm-hmm.
I may be getting the dates wrong, but I think I was 16 and I had gone to a Friday night fight at the Garden because I went to the fights and it was um, Dick Tiger versus Henry Hank,
Yeah.
middleweights, good middleweights. And now I was my friend Stewie, we're leaving the old Garden on 48th Street, heading for the subway to go back to Brooklyn. I look and there's Sonny Liston. Honest to God, there's
Wow.
Sonny Liston standing there, and no one even knew. He was in an old beat up overcoat, and I had the program for the fight and a pen, and I went up and I said, Sonny, would you sign for me? And he said, sure. And he signed, Charles Sonny Liston. That was his name, Charles Sonny Liston. I was a kid, Iggy. And he was going to fight Patterson. They had signed. And I said, Sonny, when you fight Floyd's, what's going to happen? And he said, I'm going to knock him out in the first round. That's what he said, Iggy. And he knocked him out twice in the first round. But I didn't know. I thought Floyd was really good. I'm going to the subway with my friend Stewie, and I said, Liston doesn't know a thing about boxing.
That's so funny.
That really happened.
Let me ask you one more thing about Foreman. So he didn't have as distinguished of a career as Lewis, Ali, Marciano, obviously. But he had a very unique career in that he took 10 years off, came back, and was the heavyweight champion at 45. What was that? Yeah. That's like some LeBron James stuff.
Yes, it's Iggy. Ali had an extraordinary career. Foreman may have had an equally extraordinary career. He knocked out Michael Moorer, who was a champion, and he was losing. As I recall, he was losing that fight. All of a sudden, he came in with a right hand, and he put the guy to sleep. He was just like sleeping on the ring. It was extraordinary, and it showed, again, in boxing, I like to say, a great champion shows his character to the world. George showed his character to the world as a fighter. He was going to win that. He didn't care about it. He was all puffed up. I'm going to knock you out. I'm going to knock you out. And he did. Now, let me tell you about when he retired from boxing and came back. He had lost to Ali, and Iggy.
He was humiliated.
He was humiliated. He got knocked out. He was exhausted. He got knocked out for 10. He couldn't get. It wasn't a technical knockout. They counted 10 over him.
Yeah.
Well, Iggy, I believe it blew his mind.
Yeah.
That it blew his mind. So he had some fights after that. He had one fight where he fought 5 guys in one night. He did.
What?
But bums. Oh, absolutely. And he wanted
what
to
kind
show.
Of sideshow bullshit is that?
He did that. And he wanted to show that he had stamina.
Oh.
And he could beat 5 guys in one night. And he did. Okay. Then at some point, he fought a heavyweight from Philly named Jimmy Young. Jimmy Young was we've seen it together. Yeah. Jimmy Young I just loved him. What he was a beautiful boxer who could not punch. He was very hard to hit. He was skillful. And he could hit you. He had every punch, every combination, but he had no power. Well, in that fight, George hurt him. And afterward, whatever round it was, Jimmy Young said he didn't remember the round. That's how much he almost went out. Wow. But he rallied, and he really came on, and Foreman had no defense against him. Finally, he knocked George Foreman down. Wow. A guy who couldn't punch. He knocked him down. He didn't knock him out, but he won a decision. Foreman was humiliated. Now he goes to his locker room, and he's crushed. According to him, Iggy, I'm not making fun. This is according to him. Jesus Christ came in to his locker room and Foreman took Christ into his life and had a conversion experience. I have not had one. I believe he did, and I don't know what it means. But he had a conversion experience. He quit boxing. For the next 10 years, he was a preacher.
Wow.
He was a preacher. He really was. And then after 10 years, I don't know his motivation.
Jesus gave him the green light. He was like, we're calling you in, baby. We're calling you in, baby. We want to see you in here. We had a vote.
Maybe
I love it.
So then he said he was going to come back after 10 years, and he scheduled his first fight in Sacramento against a guy named Steve Skorsky, I think was his name. I may have it wrong. Zowski. He eventually TKO'd the guy. It was an easy fight. Well, here you have the former champion in Sacramento, and he's going to make his debut after 10 years. I was at the Chronicle. I would never miss an opportunity like that. So I got in touch with the promoter, and I said who I am. And they said, you want to talk to George? You got it. So I drove up to have a one-on-one with Foreman. But my mindset was this. Many years earlier, when I was a freelance writer, I had gone to one of his workouts. His trainer was Dick Sadler from Hayward. And he used to train out here in Pleasanton. I think it was in Pleasanton. I went with Gary Park from Channel 2, who was the sports guy. And Gary had an interview with him, and Gary invited me to watch it. Foreman, as a young man, hardly looked at Gary, gave monosyllabic answers. He was not impolite, but he was brusque, not welcoming. I thought, here's a moron and a brute. That's what I thought. Just an unpleasant man.
Because that's what Ali made him look like too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now I'm driving up to Sacramento, and I'm nervous because who needs to have a crummy interview and have a guy be shitty to you? So I get to the gym where he's working out. And he's working out, and I'm sitting there, he's in the ring. And he comes out, he's bare-chested. And he sits down in a chair next to me. And Iggy, he gave me the warmest, sweetest smile. And he says, it's so nice of you to come up to Sacramento to be interested in me. He says, you know what? I'm fat. He said, I don't want to look like this in front of you. I'm going to just put on, I'm going to slip into a T-shirt. So he gets up, he puts the T-shirt on. And he was so self-deprecating. I'm fat. I don't want to look like this. Because, he was fat in his comeback.
Right.
So he says, you're from the Chronicle, right? I said, yeah. He says, tell Jack Fisk, I say hello, I give him all the best. As Iggy knows, Jack was my friend, and he was the famous boxing writer, crusty old, what you imagine in a book or a movie, boxing writer, known all over the world. And he had covered George. And George says, in the sweetest way, please tell Jack I'm thinking about him. Tell him I wish him all the best. And I'm sitting there thinking, who is this guy? I expected a brute, a stupid brute. And here is a charming, intelligent, engaging man. So here's where I blew it. I usually understood the moment in an interview, where is the core? The core was he had a different personality. He was a different person. Had I had my wits about me, I would have said, you're not the George I expected. I thought this, and this is how you were with Gary Park. This is how you are now. What in the world is going on? And Iggy, that would have been a great column. But I didn't have the presence of mind to ask it because I was so caught off guard. So I asked standard boxing questions, can you beat him? And I wrote a so-so column. But I had met him, and I learned my preconceptions were stupid. I should have been more open-minded. I should have been quicker in my brain. And the time I spent with him, let's say an hour, was one of the best times I ever had with an athlete in my whole life.
It's a great story. Boxing Fan Times forces Holyfield would have broken Foreman's record had he not been robbed versus Nikolai something.
Okay.
You didn't put Holyfield in your top 10.
No. Iggy, Holyfield was a great fighter. He was a warrior. He was not at that level.
Okay.
A little bit below, maybe in the top 15. And also, Iggy, he started out as a light heavyweight. In the Olympics, he was a light heavyweight. He was not quite at that level. And I may have this wrong, but Riddick Bowe knocked him out, right?
I think
Riddick, yeah.
Yeah.
Riddick Bowe is another one. I would put him maybe in my top 15. Riddick Bowe was a great underrated heavyweight.